Firstly, that there is a, yeah, I get it. Okay. First thing is the outstanding divisions for both Port Waikato and Rural Ward and for Raglan. So I've had a conversation with Councillor Eyre both yesterday and just before lunch today, and she's more than happy with that. The community board through Gabrielle yesterday said that they were more than happy with that. So is everybody happy that we create 2 community boards with divisions in it? That's the crux of it. In relation to the divisions, especially for the new Waikato, Port Waikato Rural Ward, looks like Anton's still working on that. And that will be made up of 4 community board members. So as I said to Councillor Eyre this morning, Anton might work on a couple of options that have one of those subs that has 2 members and 2 that have a member each, being still 4 but made up of threes, or it could be cut in half and just have 2 and 2. I'll leave that up to Anton to come up with a couple of options around there, because putting 4 in may be too difficult to do it that way in relation to cutting it up where the population is. So if everybody is happy with that, can we sign it up and everybody agrees that there will be those 2 divisions? All good?
Councillor Church.
Councillor Church, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think it's really good, except I did have the conversations with Councillor Eyre and about whether it should be 5 in that new ward, because, and I just wonder if we would keep an open mind about if
she gave me pretty clear instructions. We had a conversation at lunchtime. She's sticking to the 4. She's spoken to the community people, and that's what she basically came back with. If you go to 5, there will be downstream implications for it.
Yeah.
So it's really, really hard for Anton to even come up with 4, let alone 5.
Okay.
Councillor Eyre's online or some sort of synergy of mine. Can I hear you? No, I can't hear her. So that's why she rang me to speak to me. So is everybody happy with that? Okay, that's signed off then.
Galen, do we need a formal mover and a seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the first thing is that everybody supports the division within those 2 community boards, Waikato, Port Waikato Rural and Raglan. That's first choice. So somebody like to move and second that, please? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Church, all in favour, raise your hand. Carried. The next one is around numbers. Now, we've just talked about 4 in that community board area, realising that 4 will also be added to by a community councillor and also Te Takawa representative or Maori representative will be there. So it'll actually have 2 councillors as well. So it will be a community board of 6. All right. The other one that I've had discussions with which a lot of you won't be aware of, but I've been talking to Taupo. So I had a conversation with them or with Dorothy Lovell yesterday. Dorothy has canvassed 5 of the community board members, and obviously including herself. One she just cannot get a hold of, but the 5 of them agreed to move their numbers from 6 down to 4. So is there any issue around that? No issue? So with that, would somebody like to move that actually be part of the resolution as well? Councillor Patterson, Councillor Maguire, all in favour, please raise your hands. Choice carried. Galen.
Your Worship, sorry,
yes.
Just, is there any process issue with changing that number? I'm just looking at Dale, just to clarify.
Yeah.
No, there isn't. This is the opportunity to do so, and that's why we go through that that process. The only thing that I have is that we're changing from the initial proposal to a final proposal. We're changing the numbers, and have we got a submission to reinforce that?
I think if you look at the submissions, Dale, there are a couple that criticised the fact that Taupiri was actually in existence. And when they were thinking about board representation, there were a couple of references to Taupiri having representation when they're a small community of 550 compared to like the rural area that wanted the community board. And they weren't, you know, they didn't have one. So that was the kind of comparison, because a couple of community boards actually said, why is Taupiri still there?
So that's a valid reason. So we need to incorporate that reason in our rationale for the public notice. The other thing for Taupiri is the number of appointed members. How many councillors are we going to appoint to that community board?
Well, there'll still be 2 to that. Or do you want, well, actually, the current councillors, how do you feel about it?
In my opinion, 1 is sufficient, because under what you just said before, the Māori elected representative is free to go to all of them. So I thought you were indicating that 1 seat was for Māori representative and 1 was for the ward councillor, but is that not consistent across the whole district?
Yeah, so the issue will be where there is a double ward council. So you look at Tuakau, for example, Tuakau, there'd be 2, that ward will be 2 councillors plus a iwi councillor effectively in that area. So it will be made up of the iwi councillor along with one of the sitting general councillors in that.
Yeah, I think
that will apply
needs...
for Taupiri and Ngarawahia and Huntly.
Yeah,
Huntly's a little bit different.
Yeah, I just think that needs to be made clearer, especially when there's when it's a 2 or more councillor ward. And like we often, Eugene and I, if we're busy, 1 will go to 1 and 1 will go to the other, because sometimes it's just too much work. But having said that, it needs to obviously change the quorum requirement, because we couldn't have a Taupiri meeting the other day, or about 2 months ago, because we didn't have a quorum. So if we reduce down to 4 plus 1 or 2, is the quorum then 3 or is it 4? Like we need to.
It's 3, councillor.
It would be 3. So as long as yeah. Okay. Eugene, have you got a comment?
No, I'm fine. Yeah, you've covered it all off. Probably the one thing is, like say in Ngarawahia, we've got the 2 wards. Is there a councillor assigned to it, or is that a councillor representative and you can alternate, or you stick to the? Well,
look, as far as I'm concerned, there would be, because there's effectively 3 councillors in that ward by having both the Māori councillor as well, which applies to all wards. But what would happen in that case, probably you would appoint 1 to Taupiri and 1 to Ngarawahia. But I don't think the world will fall over if you alternate a bit too at the end of the day.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Beck.
Yeah, just to that point, I guess I'm just, and this is not relevant to the Southern Ward where myself and Councillor Maguire are currently, or in the area to be captured by that, because we don't have a community board. But I'm just conscious that in the instance we're just talking about, for example, where there might be 2 general ward councillors, say in the Tuakau Pokeno area, and Māori overlay through that northern bit, I'm just really conscious that in order to demonstrate value and connection with your community, you know, a general ward councillor would absolutely want to be there. Does it sort of show an inherent bias or preference to say, well, you're the formal member and you're the other one who can turn up if you want to?
So we've always had a situation up at Tuakau where there's actually three councillors that actually connect to it because of how the community board was created originally. And so what I've always done is used obviously the one on the southern side of the river and alternated between the 2 that actually represent that ward. The trouble is if you start to, in the case of what this could look like now, there'd be effectively 3 councillors. You start to put 3 councillors on to a board, you start to have, I'd call an over-influence, potentially, and I think it'd be better to stick to 2.
Yep.
Yeah. Councillor Willerton?
Yeah, it's purely just a question that I don't know. If an out-of-town councillor turns up, what are their roles and rights? Are they allowed to help? And if for some reason 2 councillors can't make it and they ask for an out-of-towner, is that valid? I just wanted to understand on that, please.
Well, normal practices, community boards are generally pretty courteous to any councillor that turns up to any community board meeting. There's obviously a difference between those that are appointed to, who will, take part in the discussion, but also have a vote. Generally, they will invite them to sit with them and discuss with them, because generally they're there because they've got something to add to value to it. So, but it just means you won't be a voting councillor.
Thank you.
Right. Kayleen?
No, I'll lower my hand. You answered it.
Right. Anton?
In terms of the community board in the North Rural Port Waikato area, there will be some overlap with the Northern Rural ward, where it goes through the southern part below Turkhouse. So that will be an instance with a ward overlap on the community board, which would also need some discussion around that position relative to the comments made earlier on the OTCB existing.
Okay. Dale had his hand up a second ago. Where's he gone? Dale?
Yeah, just be mindful that it's not automatic that you appoint a Māori councillor to a community board. The council will appoint up to half the elected members as appointed councillors. So if there are 6 elected, then you can have up to 3 appointed. If there's 4 elected, you can have up to 2. And it's the council's role to nominate where those 2 or 3 come from. And generally it would be one from a Māori and one from a general ward, but it's not automatic and it's not over and above.
No, and that's how I've always understood it too. And council may choose otherwise after the next election. Depends on what it looks like.
So Dale, I've got a question on that. Do we have to be specific in our representation review? Can we just say 2 councillors? 2 ward councillors?
No, my reading of the legislation is at the rep review time, like when you do your final proposal, council must specify the number and which ward they are to come from. So it is part of this process.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how we've historically done it is one of the 2 ward councillors.
Yep.
The only one that's been an issue is probably been the one in the north. Now we're split up, but of course the complication that comes to it now is around the Māori representative, which you basically got 2 people that will represent 6 community boards. So they'll be strung across the whole lot of them. So if you want to get a Māori prospectus, you actually have to appoint one of those 2, depending on whether they're southern or northern, to each of those 3 community boards, and then use one of the general councillors from that. Councillor Beck.
Yes, thank you. Just following up on a question for Dale on that. So I think you were saying there then that the elected member appointed is one of the members of the committee. Does that mean, having just adopted 4 for Taupiri, then that's 3 community members and 1 general ward member, or even 2 community members elected by the public and a Māori and a general ward, or were you meaning on top of?
No, so if you have a community board of 4 elected members, then you can have up to half of that number as appointed members. So you have 4 elected members, and in addition, you can have up to 2 appointed members, which happen to be councillors from the wards.
Thank you.
So that's what's likely to happen both at the Port Waikato Rural and also at the Taupiri. That would be an outcome of that. Right, Galen, anything else?
I do not believe so, and I can put hand on heart this time, Mayor Allen.
I hope so, because I'm looking for that last email you sent through with the data that I've worked off. So we've confirmed all the numbers for the Huntly Community Board at 6, Ngarawahia at 6, Raglan at 6, and Tuakau at 6. Those are the elected community board members, not the councillors, community board members. So understand that? Have you got I just want to give you a little bit of data about that so you can ponder while before I go to Councillor Beck. So when I look at the population within the Huntly, and these are not validated yet by Department of Stats, but Anton's generally pretty close to it. So the Huntly Community Board population is 8,950. 6 community board members means that each community board member would represent 1,491 people. Ngaruahi is made up of 9,200 people within it, also represented by 6 community board members, and that would equate to 1,533 people per community board member. The Port Waikato one would have 4 members, and they would represent 1,140 per representative, because there's 4,560 in that. Raglan is 5,170 with 6 community board members, giving you an average of 861 per community board member. Where am I? The Tuakau one is 7,780, represented by 6 community board members, which would be 1,296 per community board member. The interesting one was Taupo, 550, coming down to 4 would be 137 people per representative. If I took it based off the 6 that are there now, it's down as low as 91 per representative. So you can see why I reached out to Taupo to say you need to seriously look at this. So, Councillor Beck.
Yeah, thank you. I just wondered if, Galen, if you could just step us through what happens from here in regards to the maps that confirm the subdivisions and community board areas. It'll obviously be with us on the 28th for final adoption. Will we see it prior?
Well, we'll work with Anton and I will continue working with the political working group of the Mayor, yourself and Councillor Sedgwick, just on finalising some of those tweaks to the maps that we need to do to get lines in place and everything. And we are hoping, well, we will work closely with Councillor Eyre on the Rural Community Board subdivisions areas and everything like that before we actually put it out in a council agenda for adoption. So we're hoping to have the report around about the 21st or 22nd of September. What's that? And no,
Thursday, Wednesday.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I'll be honest. We have to have it out by Thursday.
Yeah, I realise that.
Yeah,
this is quite a comprehensive report for this thing,
yep,
because there's so much stuff that needs to be compiled. The evidence needs to be compiled against why we made certain decisions, because yep, that's what will be judged against. Councillor Sedgwick.
The comment that Dale's just sent through about the plus or minus relating to community boards as well, are they all within compliance?
So that's for subdivisions, Councillor, I believe you're saying, isn't it, Dale? Yes, so it's for any community board that is subdivided must comply with the plus or minus 10%, and that is what we're working towards, and that's what's caused us a few little issues in looking at the rural and Port Waikato one, but the Raglan subdivision and everything works out quite well between the rural and the urban. So
the Raglan one sort of works out at 4 members coming from the urban and 2 from the rural. So the rural get it. The one up in the Port Waikato rural is a little bit different because of where there are population masses and where there's very sparsely populated areas. So, you know, that's why I've said to Anton, it's a blank canvas. You can come up with 2 wards within that, 3 wards or 4 wards, and just jiggle the numbers to suit whatever works. Because you've got to give fair representation, but it's not as easy as you might think to be able to create that number when you've got such a gaping hole in the middle of this thing, because it was never designed for rural areas. It was always about an urban mass. All right, I don't think there's any other outstanding things. Kayleen. So that's the conclusion of our deliberations. Any last minute issues anyone wants to raise? Don't think so. Once again, I want to thank the team. I want to thank my team, Councillor Beck and Cedric, along with Gayleen, with Anton, Matt, and all the team in behind them that have done the hard mahi here. And there has been a hell of a lot of it, I can tell you. But once again, just want to thank everybody. And I know Dale's been involved in that too, so it is much appreciated. And we will try and tweak any bits and pieces or twigs or branches that might pop up over the next few days before the report is finalised. So if there is anything of any substance, we'll have to deal with it at the council meeting on the 28th. But I can't think of anything that's might be outstanding now. We've got those divisions and those numbers sorted out. So yeah, well done. Councillor Church.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just those are interesting information around the community board. So that will be sent to all of us councillors as a draft.
That's my mess. I've done that. So
yeah. Councillor E's asked for it but online. So yeah, that will be helpful.
I'll type it up. I'm sort of busy all day, but I will type it up, or my PA will type it up and flick it out all to you probably tonight. But happy to share it with everyone. It does make for sobering reading when you actually look at it, and I've done the maths, and yeah, it makes it very interesting. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Don't forget, we're back on at past, which it must be just about past, is it?
It is.
Yeah, for the waters one. So that's on a different Zoom. So I'll catch you on that one.